Betty sits slumped on the edge of a stained sofa, staring at the floor like it holds the answer to everything she's been trying to understand. Larry paces back and forth, wearing the expression of a man who knows something is happening but can't quite explain what it is. They keep repeating the same thing to everyone who asks. We ain't got nowhere else. The Whittakers are facing the kind of crisis they've never seen coming, not from poverty, not from ridicule, not from strangers online, but from a woman who claims she has the right to take the last piece of property they thought belonged to them. The one patch of land where they believed they could not be touched. A dispute that began with paperwork is now threatening to push Betty and Larry into homelessness. For decades, their understanding was simple. The trailer they lived in? The land under it? The property that sat just across the dirt road they walked every single day to fetch water from neighbors and haul scraps for the dogs? They believed all of it belonged to them. The family had been there since long before anyone started showing up with cameras and questions. But now they're being told that the ground beneath their front door belongs to somebody else. The situation came to light after an inspector reported that the trailer was sitting on property owned by an LLC, not by the Whittakers. The family didn't understand what an LLC was, who owned it, or when that land slipped from their grandmothers or great-grandmothers' hands into something nobody in West Virginia could explain. To Betty, ownership isn't something that comes with paperwork. Her idea of ownership is simple. You live on it. You take care of it. It's yours. And for most of her life, that was true. No one came knocking. No letters arrived. Nobody challenged the family's presence. No one asked for proof. The shack remained in the same spot since Betty was barely old enough to remember how long she'd been alive. But an inspector's report changed everything. Suddenly, someone outside their world was saying they had no right to stay. That they needed to move. That the house didn't belong to them. That the property wasn't theirs. And they had 30 days to leave. 30 days, for a family that has never filled out paperwork, never hired an attorney, never learned how ownership works outside the mountains. Betty didn't cry. She just sat, silent, confused, repeating the same words like a prayer she hoped would make the truth change. We own it. My family been here. I ain't never lived nowhere else. Larry, on the other hand, grew angry. He mumbled to every person who came near the porch. They tryin' to take what ain't theirs, tryin' to put us out in the road. At first, he blamed Adult Protective Services. He believed they wanted the land because they took Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine. But then he learned the truth was much stranger. A private individual, someone who had never set foot at the Whittakers' home before, had gone to the courthouse and registered the land under an LLC. This woman now claims she owns the land and wants the family off it. And just like that, a stranger could put them out into the open without shelter, without warning, without a place to go. They might lose the last thing they believed the world couldn't take from them, their home. Yet the biggest question isn't why someone would take the land. It's how nobody ever stopped it. A neighbor overheard, shaking his head, frustrated like only locals can be when outsiders interfere. Nobody cared about that land, till folks started broadcasting it all over the internet. Soon as they got famous, people started digging papers, trying to own them. Their home, once ignored and avoided, has become valuable, not because of the land, but because of what sits on it. The story. The most inbred family in America, as the internet labeled them, is now a tourist attraction. The road outside has become a destination for people with phones, cameras, backpacks, and curiosity. Even when Betty and Larry aren't on the porch, the cars come. People hang cameras out their windows. Some stop. Some trespass. Others yell questions from the road as though the family were zoo animals. Larry has chased more strangers off in the last 2 years than in the 40 before that. Yet, What angers him more than the people is the woman demanding ownership without ever living a day of her life in odd. You don't just claim what ain't yours. But the woman doesn't see it that way. She has paperwork, documents, records filed in county offices. Something that holds more power in the eyes of the law than memory, time, or decades of occupying the same space. To lawyers, government agencies, and inspectors, the Whittakers' history doesn't matter. Paper matters. And paperwork is what the Whittakers never had. They signed nothing. They bought nothing. Their hands never touched a deed. Life passed them by, and now the law is saying the soil they stood on their entire lives belongs to a name on a piece of paper. Not Larry. Not Betty. Not their family. Just someone else. And now the Whittakers must decide if they want to fight. Not with fists, not with yelling, but with something they've never been equipped for: lawyers, courtrooms, documents. Things they can't read, can't understand, and don't trust. A few people online are offering to help. A woman who visited them recently promised to hire an attorney. She told Betty over the phone, "You don't have to leave in 30 days. We're going to fight this." Betty didn't comprehend everything, but she nodded, hopeful, clinging to something she still can't define but wants to believe. Larry is skeptical. He's seen people come to help before. They film, they post, they profit. This time, though, there's no camera, no interview, no tripod pointed at the porch. Just concern and paperwork they can't read but desperately need. If they lose this fight, Larry and Betty could be homeless. And if they become homeless, the land that meant nothing to outsiders for over a century will be gone forever. But who exactly is this woman trying to seize the property? Why did she want it? And how did she get her hands on it without ever stepping foot in odd? Hey everyone, before we get into the next part, I've got something special to share with you. If you're all about making your home smarter, cozier, and just a little bit more you, then you've got to check this out. We've partnered with trekbo.com, a place built for people who love clever solutions and everyday comfort. From wellness and skincare must-haves to smart home gadgets, heated gear, and lifestyle tech, Trekbo is packed with products that make life easier, warmer, and way more fun. I've personally picked some of my favorite finds, things that actually work, look great, and make your day smoother. Whether it's something to simplify your morning routine, help you unwind after a long day, or bring a little innovation into your home, you'll find it there. So before you scroll past, take a quick look at trekbo.com. Trust me, it's full of discoveries waiting to make your everyday better. Alright, now let's get back to it, because after this video, you're definitely going to want to explore what Trekbo has in store for the Whittaker household community. Should the Whittakers lose their land because they never had paperwork? Or does the history of living on a property matter more than legal documents? The phone call that gave Betty hope left Larry with more questions than answers. It was the first time someone had explained that the 30-day eviction notice wasn't official yet. But it also confirmed something else. The land dispute was real. A woman they'd never met was claiming ownership of the soil beneath their front door. And she had the paperwork to prove it. Betty sat rocking gently, staring at her hands as if she could squeeze the truth out of her fingers. Larry leaned against the doorway, rubbing his jaw the same way he did when he was thinking hard but didn't want to show it. "What they want with this here land anyway?" he muttered. Betty shrugged, her voice tiny. "We lived here all our life. Don't make sense to take it." To them, the idea that anyone would want their property wasn't just confusing, it was surreal. The Whittakers' land has never been valuable. It isn't farmland. It isn't flat. It isn't modern. It's not near a highway or a town center. It's hidden behind woods, up a dirt path that most cars can't climb without scraping. Even locals sometimes joke that you need four-wheel drive just to wave at the place. So why now? Locals say something no outsider has considered yet. The land isn't valuable because of what it is. It's valuable because of who lives on it. Before the Whittakers became known online, their home was just a forgotten trailer. Now, it's the face of a viral phenomenon. The inbred family in the mountains. A spectacle. An online curiosity. A location typed into GPS devices with the same interest people use to find abandoned hospitals or famous graves. Some people drive all the way from other states just to snap a selfie by the dirt road. Others bring their kids, laughing like it's entertainment. There's value in attention. And attention is worth money. The woman claiming the property might never say it aloud, but people in the holler whisper the truth. She wants to own the land where the Whittakers sit, because the whole world watches it now. Larry understands this better than he lets on. He doesn't know how the internet works, but he knows when people are trying to profit off his family. It ain't for the land, he mutters. It's for us. Folks want to own us. Betty shakes her head, not fully grasping it, but aware that something ugly is happening. She's watched strangers arrive with phones and tripods. She's seen hands reach through her fence. She's seen barrels stolen, trash bags taken as souvenirs, and rocks picked up from the yard by tourists who actually bragged later online, claiming they'd stolen something from the Whittakers. To someone else, it might be junk. But to Betty, it's home. The same people who laughed at their way of life now want a piece of it. And someone has found a way to get it on paper. The woman at the center. Her name isn't publicly known yet. But what is known is this. She never lived in Odd. She never helped the Whittakers. She never stepped foot on the property before filing a claim. She purchased the land under an LLC. She filed quietly without notifying the family. Some locals say she's from another part of West Virginia. Others say she's from out of state. A few believe she's connected to someone in law enforcement or someone who previously owned land in the area. No one is sure. But one thing is clear. She has enough knowledge to use paperwork to her advantage. She filed for the land when no one was watching. The Whittakers, who do not read contracts, do not own computers, and have never gone through a legal process, had no clue. But the real question is how she got the deed in the first place. It shouldn't be possible to transfer ownership of land someone is living on without any notice, unless there's a loophole. Some locals believe the property was defaulted decades ago. Perhaps it was sold off when a previous owner died without paperwork. Maybe taxes on the land went unpaid. Maybe someone else claimed the land before the Whittakers ever settled there. It's impossible to know until a lawyer deciphers the records. Which is exactly why the Whittakers need help. The legal fight they never expected. The woman who visited recently, the one promising a lawyer, has been researching the filings. She claims the inspector confirmed one thing clearly. Betty and Larry don't own the land they live on. But they might legally own the land across the road. The land with the old septic tank. The land where a previous trailer once stood. The land that hasn't been lived on in years. Larry thought they owned both. In his mind, property is just property. You have land, you use land, and you don't think about who owns the paperwork. But now, the lawyer has to untangle something that's been sitting in confusion for decades. If the Whittakers can prove their family was granted rights years ago, even verbal agreements, witness accounts, or historical records, they might have a chance. If they can prove the property was wrongfully sold or transferred, they may be able to reverse it. If they can provide evidence that they paid taxes, even indirectly through someone else, they might reclaim it. But without legal help, they'll lose it all. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If they lose this property, there may be no other place for them to go. Their income comes from SSI and disability benefits. They survive on limited money, limited supplies, and help from neighbors and online supporters. They don't have credit. They don't have loans. They don't know how to sign mortgage paperwork. They are vulnerable in every way a person can be vulnerable. Losing land means losing shelter. Losing shelter means homelessness. Homelessness means losing eligibility to ever get Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine back, because without a legal home, you can't be approved to care for vulnerable adults. Betty's face breaks a little each time this possibility is mentioned. She misses them. She wants to see them. She wants to talk to them. But she can't even get a phone call. Adult Protective Services hasn't given updates. The legal system moves slowly, and she doesn't know how to fight it. Losing land would mean losing them forever. That's why the woman offering to help matters. She isn't promising them fame. She isn't asking for money. She's offering a lawyer who can tell them the truth and maybe protect what's left. What happens next? The lawyer is now preparing to pull deeds from county records, investigate the LLC transfer, identify whether the Whittakers have legal rights based on occupancy, explore options for emergency housing or legal protection. If the worst happens and the land is lost entirely, there is talk of relocating them to a new trailer on another piece of property. But that requires one thing no one has ever done successfully for the family: putting a home in their name without destroying their benefits. If they own property outright, their SSI benefits could be reduced or taken away. It's a trap many outsiders don't understand. Give them too much, and you take away what little they rely on. They need safety without losing support. They need a home without losing income. They need legal representation without exploitation. And above all, they need someone who doesn't see them as a spectacle to own. Comment below. Do you believe someone intentionally claimed the Whittakers' land for personal gain, or was this an old forgotten deed that came back to haunt them? The land dispute had exposed something even deeper than legal confusion. It showed just how fragile the Whittaker family's entire existence had always been. For decades, they were shielded from the world by isolation. Now, the world was at their door, empowered by digital clout, court filings, and paperwork they'd never understand. What looked like a legal battle over property was actually a struggle over control. Who gets to decide the fate of a vulnerable family? Who gets to profit from them? Who gets to speak for them? And the more the lawyer dug, the more unsettling the answers became. The paper trail nobody ever saw. The county clerk's office wasn't used to outside attention. Most of the property disputes in the area were about fence lines or forgotten tax bills. But when the woman working with the Whittakers showed up with a folder of questions regarding the land beneath the family's home, the reaction was immediate and telling. The clerk made a comment under her breath. "Oh, it's that property." That single sentence carried weight. It suggested this wasn't the first time someone had asked. Something about that land had been swirling below the surface long before Betty and Larry realized they were at risk. Public property records revealed an unexpected history. The land had been traded multiple times over decades. It had once belonged to a coal company. It was divided and sold off in small parcels. One parcel, the one the Whittakers' trailer sits on, had unclear ownership. The title had been transferred into an LLC, quietly, without any public announcement. Strangely, the LLC responsible for acquiring the land wasn't tied to any local family. It wasn't tied to any business in the county. It wasn't even registered under a recognizable name. It looked like a placeholder corporation, created only to hold the deed. What kind of person or business creates a shell company just to buy remote land in Odd, West Virginia? Not someone looking to farm. Not someone planning to build a home. Not someone trying to mine. Someone with a different kind of plan. When a location becomes a commodity, the Whittakers' homestead may look like poverty and neglect to outsiders. But it has become something profitable in the digital age, a landmark of curiosity. Millions of views. Global interest. journalists photographing their porch, influencers driving hours to film reactions, comments online from people saying they want to visit the famous inbred family. To the world, it's entertainment. To a predator, it's real estate with revenue potential. If a person could own the land, they could charge documentary crews for access, sell rights to film there, place tourist restrictions, lease access to content creators, monetize the location itself. It sounds extreme only to people who don't understand how digital capitalism works. But it's already happening in abandoned prisons, murder houses, cult compounds, ghost towns, and tragic locations turned into profitable attractions. The Whittakers are not protected by wealth, education, or advocates. They have no PR representative. They have no lawyers on retainer. They have no official guardians who understand contracts. They are the most vulnerable type of people to a world where tragedy is business. The woman who filed for the land didn't need to publicly announce her intentions. All she needed was ownership. Everything else would follow. Betty and Larry's reality: they never stood a chance alone. When the lawyer explained the situation, he didn't sugarcoat it. He told the woman helping them, they never would have known this happened until someone kicked them out. That's the weapon of paperwork. It's silent. It's invisible to those who don't understand it. And it doesn't need your consent to destroy you. Betty and Larry don't have internet. They don't receive certified mail regularly. Betty cannot read a contract. Larry doesn't understand property lines or corporation names. If someone handed them a deed and asked them to sign it, they would assume it was for electricity or groceries. They would sign anything with trust. They have lived for decades without legal literacy. In a world where contracts decide everything, they are defenseless. That's what makes this situation predatory. The system that both helps and harms. Some people online ask, why don't they just move into a better place? Others say, why don't they just buy a small house somewhere else? But these questions ignore a crucial truth. Owning property can destroy their benefits. The lawyer explained it clearly. If they own a second home, they could lose SSI. If they own a valuable asset, it can be counted as income. If the value exceeds certain limits, their benefits stop. Their food assistance, their Medicaid, their monthly support, all of it could vanish if someone gifts them land or a house in their name. Not because they're rich, but because the government makes assumptions based on asset value, not actual usability. Even if the trailer was worth $15,000, the government might treat them like they suddenly had $15,000 in income. So when outsiders show up promising gifts, renovations, cars, or property without understanding how benefits work, they can accidentally sabotage the family's only source of survival. That's why the land battle isn't just a legal fight. It's a fight to preserve their rumors in Odd. Who is behind the LLC? Odd isn't a big town. Word travels. And the gossip has been circulating. Some say the buyer is a wealthy outsider. Others suspect a local trying to flip the land in the future. A few whisper that it's someone in law enforcement or someone connected to the coal past of the region. The truth is still unclear. But one rumor stands out. They only bought the land after the videos blew up. If that's true, it means the purchase wasn't about land value, it was about influencer value. They wanted to own the location where the most controversial family in America lives. They wanted a piece of viral history. And if they owned it, they could control what the world sees. That means controlling access, charging visitors, signing contracts with creators, monetizing the terrain. This isn't far-fetched. In fact, it aligns perfectly with modern exploitation. Content creators and agencies already profit from tragedy. Entire channels exist solely to showcase rural poverty, disability, and bizarre stories for clicks. The Whittakers didn't ask for this. They didn't know what it meant. And they definitely don't know how to defend themselves from it. Betty's greatest fear: losing the only home she knows. Betty isn't afraid of lawsuits. She isn't afraid of strangers. She isn't afraid of cameras anymore. What scares her is displacement. She said it plainly, voice cracking. If they move us off here, where we go? For someone who cannot travel far, who has never lived anywhere else, whose daily life revolves around familiar sounds and habits, losing home is more than inconvenience. It is trauma. Home isn't a structure to Betty. It's her world, her routine, her identity. The rattling pipes, the creaking porch, the dirt path she memorized barefoot, the exact distance to the mailbox, the mountain air she breathes every morning. It's all she knows. And somewhere, sitting behind legal filings and corporate documents, is a person who doesn't care what this land means to her. They just want ownership. Betty has no idea how fragile her situation is. The system is built on the assumption that people understand how to fight for themselves. She doesn't. Larry doesn't. And they shouldn't have to fight alone. Larry's anger: a man without tools to fight back. Larry is a protector by instinct. He's always kept strangers away. He's chased off trespassers. He's stood by Betty when she was threatened. He doesn't fear conflict. But he can't fight paperwork with fists. And that's the one thing that leaves him defeated. He can't yell at a corporation. He can't threaten a lawyer. He can't chase away a deed. He can't defend his home against something he can't even see. To a man like Larry, it's like trying to stop rain with your hands. He stands on the porch now not as a gatekeeper, but as a confused witness to something happening over his head. He knows someone is trying to take what's his. He just doesn't know how to stop it. And until recently, no one was helping. The woman helping them: suspicion or salvation. Some viewers don't trust her. Others say she's the only person who has done the right thing without asking for views. The truth may be somewhere in between. What matters is this: she's the first person to bring a lawyer. She's the first person trying to secure a septic system legally. She's the first person explaining the real rules of SSI. She's the first person offering protection instead of a camera. Whether she's perfect or flawed doesn't matter as much as one fact. The Whittakers finally have someone fighting for them in a battle they can't fight themselves. And if she succeeds, it won't just save their land. It might be the first step in securing a future where the family isn't constantly exploited, shuffled around, abused, or stripped of dignity just because the internet finds them fascinating. Where this battle leads, the next step is critical. The attorney will challenge the legality of the land transfer, demand proof that the LLC acquired the deed legitimately, argue for occupancy rights due to decades of residence, investigate whether the Whittakers have historical claim to neighboring land, explore protections to prevent forced eviction. If the lawyer can prove fraud, coercion, or manipulation, the Whittakers might not only keep their property, they may be entitled to compensation or permanent rights. If the lawyer fails, the outcome could be devastating. Forced relocation, loss of benefits, loss of hope, permanent separation from Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine, homelessness with no path back. This isn't just a legal dispute anymore. It's a battle for identity, home, and the last shred of control the family has left. And while the internet watches with curiosity, the Whittakers sit on their porch, waiting, unaware of how close they came to losing everything without ever being told a single word. Comment below. Do you think the land fight is motivated by greed, or do you believe it's the result of long-forgotten paperwork coming back to haunt the family? The front porch of the Whittakers' new cabin may look peaceful from the outside. To someone driving by, it would seem like nothing more than a quiet country evening. But beneath that stillness is a storm that most people will never fully understand. For the first time in their lives, Betty and Larry aren't being threatened by neighbors, authorities, or content creators. They're being threatened by something they can't see or comprehend. A battle written in legal ink, fought in offices, waged in courtrooms, and won by those who can afford to understand it. And while the lawyer and the woman helping them gather evidence and strategy, Betty and Larry are trying to survive in a routine that no longer makes sense to them. They're waiting for someone to call, waiting to see if they lose their home, waiting for news about the 3 people they love most, who are now living under another roof with strangers making decisions for them. It is a helpless state of being, a slow-motion version of fear, a system that creates problems, then punishes them. The more the attorney uncovers, the clearer it becomes that the problem isn't just a mysterious LLC trying to claim their land. The bigger problem is that the Whittakers were never taught how to exist within the system that governs them. They don't understand SSI regulations. They don't know why they must document repairs or why they can't simply fix things the way they've always done it. They live in a different world than the one that judges them. They're playing a game without knowing the rules. And while most people accuse them of ignorance, the system never offered them a chance to learn. In fact, the system benefits from their confusion. When individuals lack education, they become easy to move, easy to control, easy to separate from their own children and property. That's the quiet cruelty that rarely gets discussed. You can't punish a person for failing a test when nobody ever taught them the material. The real question: who gets to decide their future? Right now, 3 different forces claim to know what's best for the Whittakers. Adult Protective Services, who insist that Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine are safer under state supervision. Content creators, who argue that exposure and donations help the family survive and deserve continuation. The attorney, who believes securing property rights and legal protections is the only path to real independence. Each side has valid points. Each side has flaws. But where are Betty and Larry in all of this? No one is asking them what they want. No one is asking what they understand. No one is explaining their options in language they can follow. Protecting someone does not mean replacing their voice with yours. Yet that's exactly what has happened. And now, their future feels like a tug-of-war between outsiders who think they know best, while the family being discussed remains confused on their own porch, holding on to nothing but faith. What happens if they lose the battle? If the mysterious LLC wins ownership of the land, the consequences could unfold slowly or suddenly. They may not be evicted overnight, but over time. The land could be fenced. Entry could require permission. Repairs could be legally blocked. Rent could be forced on them despite having lived there for decades. They could be served a notice they don't understand. The final step would be eviction, not because they did anything wrong, but because they don't have the legal literacy to challenge it. Without intervention now, they would lose not just the land beneath their feet but the last physical connection to the children they raised. And once they are uprooted, the state could argue that Betty and Larry, now homeless and struggling, are unfit to ever care for or visit the others again. That's the real danger most people don't see. This isn't only a property battle. It's a domino. If it falls, everything falls with it. What happens if they win? If the lawyer can prove ownership confusion, fraud, or improper transfer, the Whittakers could gain legal rights to the land with protections that prevent anyone from displacing them in the future. That protection alone would stabilize their lives more than any donation ever has. They could safely apply for a septic system, install a new trailer without risk, avoid benefit penalties through legal planning, secure supervised visitation rights with proper counsel, build a legal case to reunite with their family in the future. Winning doesn't mean wealth. It doesn't mean luxury. It doesn't mean cameras. It means security, something they have never had. The public needs to ask better questions. Instead of asking, why don't they just clean better? Why don't they just move? Why don't they just learn? We should be asking, why did no one teach them these things? Why did no one step in before it got this bad? Why is their disability taken as a reason for punishment instead of support? Why are they constantly documented but never represented? Why does the system remove people before offering help? Why does poverty attract exploitation but not infrastructure? The answers don't indict the family, they indict all of us. Betty's hope, Larry's fear. Betty is simple in her desires. She just wants her routine back, her family whole, and her porch to feel safe. She doesn't demand wealth. She doesn't demand fame. She does not ask the government for more. She just wants to know when she can see her family again and whether she will wake up tomorrow in the same home she slept in tonight. Larry, on the other hand, feels the pressure differently. He has always been the one who tries to handle it. Even when he didn't know how, he stood in front of them like a shield. He doesn't want someone else making decisions about his land, his house, or his people. But even his stubbornness has limits. The law is stronger than muscle. The courts are stronger than anger. And he knows, even if he won't admit it, that he needs help. For perhaps the first time in his life, Larry must trust strangers to fight a battle he can't. And that terrifies him more than losing the land. This story has never been about inbreeding. It has never been about their intelligence. It has never been about their quirks, their porch, their dogs, their house, their clothes, or their roaches. It has always been about vulnerability. The world labeled them interesting, strange, viral, inbred, backwoods, uneducated. But the truth is simpler. They were ignored, forgotten, left behind by a society that only pays attention when it wants a spectacle. Now that attention has consequences. And unless someone stands between them and the forces circling their land, the Whittakers could lose the only thing they've ever had, the right to exist in peace. The fight continues. The lawyer's next steps will determine everything. The land records must be challenged. The state must be reminded that disability does not erase rights. The benefits must be protected legally, not accidentally destroyed by well-meaning donations or failed promises. This isn't about saving a family from themselves. It's about protecting them from a world that suddenly wants a piece of their life. Whether you support them or not, whether you watch them or not, whether you think the attention helped or harmed them, one fact remains. They deserve safety, not spectacle. Comment below. Do you think the battle for the land is the true threat to the Whittakers, or will the fight for visitation rights become the next major challenge they face?